All right, let's get into another week of suggestions box for the game of Overwatch 2. What have you guys cooked in last week's comments? Let's take a look. The first one from A Duck with a Knife. A little scary. Suggestion: reverse Symmetra's secondary fire projectile sizes. The longer you charge, the smaller and faster the projectile becomes to make it more of a skill shot rather than a massive 100 damage projectile that's double the size of a Sigma rock. Okay, first of all, it's not double the size of Sigma rock, but maybe do the same for her primary fire as well, decreasing the beam size the more you charge it, to make it easier to charge the beam, but harder to hold that high charge due to the increased tracking needed. Adjust damage for primary and secondary fires as necessary. Okay, I don't like the suggestion for two reasons. Number one, I think the idea of the longer you charge and the smaller and faster the projectile becomes is an okay idea on the surface, but when you unpack it, how frustrating would it be to like full charge it, have a very super sniper fast projectile, and then they live with a sliver of health and you want to hit them with the follow-up shot, and because you just do like a little quarter charge to try to tag them for that last little bit, it goes super slow because it's a scaling speed. Not sure if I like that, because I'm just kind of like remembering the times, like the 3 times I've ever played Symmetra. Yes, my secondary fire doesn't 2-tap people, but you know, I land a good secondary fire, 100 damage, and I'm like, ooh, they have like 20 HP. I do a quick charge, try to get that perfect angle, and I know the velocity or the speed of the projectile is always stable right now, and it's easy to get that follow-up snipe, and it feels pretty good. And I'm just thinking of those moments where it would suck to have a linear ramping version of that. So it's a no for me there. The primary fire making it faster to charge, but smaller. I mean, I feel like the beam isn't good anyways. Like it would have to be some obscene number, which would be to make up for the really bad hitbox. And you know, that might break some breakpoints and make it a little too finicky. So, I mean, right now on this current patch, they buffed the beam quite a bit, along with giving Symmetra a bit more HP. And I think that's sort of leaning in the right direction in terms of giving her more of an identity. But I think we still need to cook with this one. So this is a no for me. They should make every map have an optional noon bright lighting scheme available for people that don't want to play hard to see night or the Mexico modes. What's a Mexico? Oh, like the stereotypical Mexican filter where everything is that orange hue. I got you. You know, the more I think about this suggestion, the more I'm sort of leaning towards giving players the option to like tick off different sort of lightings the way they want it, but I think that could just be done on your own monitor. Like if you're having, you know, hard to see night mode, like certain maps are a little bright, you can tweak your brightness and tweak certain like monitor color corrections that kind of match your eyes. There's some colorblind modes that remove some reds for those who are like red colorblind and kind of like replace them with different sorts of colors to help those. I'm kind of in the middle on this. I think it is cool to let people pick their lighting, but at the same time you can do it on your own. The bigger suggestion would be allowing players to have the different color options during the whole season. So if I queue in a Blizzard world, it could either be that overcast rainy mode, or it could be nighttime, or it could be daytime. I'm actually not sure what they did this season, because traditionally at the beginning of the season in the patch notes, they usually say for this season, this map, they added this new lighting or that new lighting. And I feel like every time I play a map right now in ranked, it's like one fixed lighting throughout the whole season. So like I feel like adding that variety and that different lighting mode should give it a bit more depth and life to the maps in general. But you know, this one, I'm kind of in the middle. Suggestion: Maze Snowball Offensive Competitive. Like always? No. These modes will just kind of like clog up your arcade feed, and modes like this usually die off within like the first 3-4 days after people do their challenges, get their achievements, and get, you know, those cosmetic incentives, which is like, you know, every winter you get those sprays and titles or whatever, and that's about it. There's no reason to play it otherwise. One thing I would want them to do is probably add some of these to the custom game mode in the workshop, so people can, you know, play it throughout the whole year if they want to. But I sort of actually understand Blizzard's perspective on not always allowing people to play some of these, you know, seasonal modes, because it removes the anticipation, the waiting, and the fun for it. If you're allowed to play it all year, there's nothing special. Suggestion: I think that the arcade mode in Overwatch should have actual party game modes, like maybe Infected, some versions of Sticks and Stones, etc. Arcade right now just feels like a slightly tuned version of Quick Play. I agree. I think actually the arcade mode should have more rotations of actual fun modes that are like vetted and very good. Some of my favorite custom game modes are like One Dad, 11 Kids, or Mystery Everything, where it's not only Mystery Heroes, but you also get Mystery Ultimate. And they should more often feature some really refined workshop modes that some workshoppers have cooked up. I really wish they added more resources to make that a little bit better so the community can come up with some very, very good, maybe a little unbalanced, but that's why it's arcade, fun game modes. Another one of my favorites is the Doomfist Sumo was really fun as well. And I think doing that like Halo did, where you actually were able to queue into some community made modes, is awesome, awesome, awesome. And yeah, nothing else to add to that. Suggestion, upgrade the practice range. It is super outdated, and I think if it were more like Vaxta is the 5-digit code, by the way, for those who don't know, where you can import in the custom game mode, VAXTA, and it's a custom mode made by a workshopper. I can't recall the name off the top of my head, which is a very good warm-up practice mode that a lot of people use. But still, the practice range, it would benefit the casual players more, of course, for those who don't actually know how to do that and just hit the practice range. I agree. I mean, they sort of updated the practice range. There's that like extra room in the back now where you can do bullseye, moving targets and stuff like that. Although the moving targets aren't my favorite because they just kind of like slide linearly and there's not much randomness to it. Maybe adding random bullseye a little bit quicker, kind of like Valorant, where like those player models just keep popping up in random spots. I think that's like a better approach to it. It's certainly better than it used to be. They give you like damage boost option. There's a sniper bot at the top now, a couple of shield bots, but it could still be refined. So yes for me. A little more attention there would be good. Oh, and before I move on, 250 HP bots, since everybody's HP got scaled up to 250 HP. And the tanks have their non-roll queue HP in there. Roll queue is the main mode in the game, so like why am I going in there and having like, Doomfist at 375 HP or Junker Queen at 375 HP? I don't like that. Maybe it's because I film a lot of my patch notes and coverage and comparisons in the practice range. It just looks weird. Next suggestion, Brig should have a number on the screen indicating how many players are currently inspired, much like Lucio shows how many people are in his aura. Not actually a bad idea in that capacity. I mentioned this in last week's suggestions box where if you do it for one, you should do it for everybody. I almost forgot Lucio's speed aura does show the number of people there. And Wrecking Ball's, Adaptive Shield aura shows a number of people there. And I remember last week's episode, I was kind of on the fence on allowing people to, or someone's suggestion on showing Junker Queen's bleed amount, or like amount targets affected by bleeds or something like that. And I was like, not a fan of that. Skill issue, blah, 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 but not in that condescending way. Hopefully nobody took it the wrong way. The fact that they do it for Lucio, I guess, yeah, you could have it on Brig, because Inspire works where like it's on impact, and that's how many people are currently like actively being healed. It doesn't tell you who's being healed, but at least somebody's being healed. So for those who don't know, if you hit somebody with Brig, your Inspire passive generates from you, and the teammate has to be in the aura at like that range, and then they get the full benefit even if they leave Brig's range to get that healing over like the 5 or 6 seconds. If you hit a target and someone walks close to Brig, they don't retroactively get the Inspire passive healing. I don't know why I threw a random tip in there. I can't help it. Yeah, I guess so. The more I think about it, fine. It's there for Lucio, fine. Add it for Brig. Suggestion, stop the current power creep that's undoing the health buffs from Season 9. This was posted 4 days ago by the time my editor set this suggestions box slideshow up for me. And I don't think Jeffrey here has heard that Alec Dawson interview with Spilo or Aaron Keller, the game director's blog, where they are mentioning true power creep, where they are actually going to keep tweaking and buffing a lot of the tanks, like Ryan getting 300 HP charge and Winston buffing his primal rage, considering individual buffs for all tanks, because they've heard that tanks are still not fun and hard to kill. And that's the direction they're going with, not saying I agree. That's power creep for the entire role, which I don't really like, so I agree there. But because this was posted 4 days ago, I'm curious what you actually considered power creep before that article got revealed. And nothing has actually been added to the game yet since to the tanks in that capacity. I feel like, they're just iterating off those health buff changes, not necessarily true power creep. They're kind of going up and down on some heroes. Like Sojourn just got de-power creeped, where they, removed a lot of the bursts from Sojourn. They nerfed Orissa's tankiness. Technically, tanks having 25% damage reduction on the head is kind of like minimizing the amount of damage output. That's considered power. I guess it's giving power to tanks, but like the power from DPS and supports is kind of not going there. So I guess it's kind of neutral. Maybe I'm just remembering wrong, but I feel like most of the patches since Season 9 is just decent iteration of some go up, some go down, some go up, some go down. Not true power creep there until they decide to blanket buff all the tanks again since the article. Maybe you're onto something. Maybe that we are experiencing more power creep. Sure. I don't think they need to buff tanks any more than they need to. They just have to like kind of re-look at some of the utility, figure out a way to help the experience of tanks rather than just keep buffing numbers. Suggestion, tanks should be the role with heavy utility, not supports. All this time, tanks created space by threatening kills and, slash mitigation. And from Overwatch 1 to Overwatch 2, they just increased their killing potential and reduced the mitigation. But maybe the right approach is to focus on the enabling part of the tank, not the damage one. What makes the tank experience so shit is having to create space by threatening kills in a meta with Suzu, TP, Lantern, Grip, Boop. Focusing the tank design on utility slash mitigation instead of damage slash mitigation would make the role easier to balance, resolve the tank experience problem since you will feel impactful with powerful cooldowns, and reward coordinated plays above hook and shoot ones. I don't necessarily disagree with this. I actually think heavy utility is, an interesting direction that tanks could go. I'm just worried about the execution on how to like play to the hero's fantasy a little more. There's one tank that I think of the moment you mentioned giving them utility is something like Zarya. And I do think Zarya is kind of good. Giving a team bubble is utility because it can help mitigate, and like the utility of it to like, how to help them take space and to dodge absorb certain abilities. I think that's pretty cool. Not a bad idea. Will it resolve the tank experience problem right away? Hard to say, because although you're not having a good time on tank, losing lethality on the tank on the same vein is also not very good if your tank doesn't feel powerful. You could feel powerful like tossing some bubbles to your team, but that's not very engaging as well. So I'm interested to see like if you iterate off this or what people in the comments have to say with what constitutes heavy utility that would feel fun for the tank. Because right now it's not really tanks that are weak per se, it's the tank fun experience that they're trying to work on, because player experience matters. I think in a vacuum, the power that tanks have right now is pretty high. I mean, most tanks can outdamage a lot of the DPS and supports right now, and they often mitigate a lot. They soak a lot of damage. They're the center focus. Like, they definitely do a lot in each game right now. So I think you're kind of on the ball. You're kind of like in the right direction. Perhaps new tanks being introduced in the game can come with a bit more heavy utility and maybe less lethality, and see how that goes. Again, I don't know if it'll resolve the tank issue. It really just depends on how fun that is. And I literally don't know if that's fun. Because although Zarya, again, has that utility with the bubble, she's fun because she's lethal. And having that beam gives you that dopamine hit where you're actually just 100 charge and just lasering people down, which can be very fun. When you say the experience is shit, the experience is shit when, you're not able to be lethal versus not just having the utility. That just like solves one small aspect of it, but still leaves a lot on the table. Not a bad choice. We'll keep it in the middle for now. Needs a little more. Suggestion, give us some new edited maps for the arcade. I would love to play a deathmatch game on one of the Survasa points, or play a CTF game on Samoa. I understand that arcade will never be their priority, but it sucks to see it get no new content outside of seasonal LTMs that are very rarely returned. And I don't think cropping existing maps for arcade would take an unreasonable amount of effort. Yeah, I agree. I think that they have a limited pool. Like, I know on like Blizzard World, you only have like the second spawn, like the second point. Same with Eichenwald and a lot of the deathmatch maps. I had never really thought of that. I don't really play that much arcade or deathmatch, but adding that wouldn't be a bad thing. Good suggestion. Suggestion, make it so you can select multiple game modes to play or queue into. For example, you select either open queue or mystery heroes, and it'll put you in the lobby that is the closest to being full. This also might be a good way to bring back assault maps to quick play, and if there is a game mode you don't like push, you don't have to play it in quick play. I like the suggestion. And I would like instantly, it's like, yes, queuing, being able to queue into multiple things, kind of like queuing all roles when you pick one, like being flexible with what you feel like playing. I would say is probably a lot better to help fill matches. I'm just curious on the actual capabilities of an algorithm and the code in the back to do it. I'm sure it's possible. Somebody smart enough can probably design a matchmaking queue that can, you know, pull you into several queues, but I'm just curious to hear the design limitations on that system. That's it. All right, and that's it for this week's suggestions box. Thanks for listening to me yap. Peace.